Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Fantastic Four number 236, cover dated November 1981. And as you can see, this is the 20th anniversary of the fabulous Fantastic Four, and it features a special cover by John Byrne, inked by Terry Austin, focusing in front and center on the Fantastic Four themselves, Marvel's first family, but with a whole host of other superhero characters, as well as Franklin Richards there, surrounding them. So there are 41 different characters on this cover. A lot of work put into this by John Byrne, composing the image and making it read for casual browsers of comics shelves and newsstands. And there is a notable feature of this cover. There, as I said, there are 41 different figures on it, and you can take your time if you're looking at this in high definition to identify them all, including the X-Men down here. And who else do we have notably there on the cover? We've got She-Hulk up there as well. In subsequent years, John Byrne would make her a member of the Fantastic Four. But also up here in the top right-hand corner, we have Stan Lee. Now, what's interesting about this is, where's Jack Kirby? Because, of course, Fantastic Four created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. And in this particular caption, we're told that there's an all-new FF blockbuster by Stan the Man Lee and Jack King Kirby included in this special triple-sized issue. So where is Jack on the cover? Well, John Byrne did draw Jack Kirby on the cover up there with Stan Lee, but Jim Shooter had Kirby removed from the cover. At the time, there was a dispute between Kirby and Marvel regarding his deal with Marvel and the fact that he felt he ought to be getting paid more money from them for his characters because of the amount of money the characters had made for the company. So he was in dispute with them. He was talking about them in the comics press, and his face was removed from the cover. It had been drawn in by Byrne, but not because of Jim Shooter solely, but because, as it turned out, Kirby himself had demanded that his face and likeness not be used to sell Marvel product. So either Kirby himself or his lawyer contacted Marvel, and so Shooter handed down the order to have Kirby's image removed from the anniversary cover. And one other little detail here is that Stan Lee's face there is not drawn by John Byrne, but rather by Marie Severin. And one of the things Byrne would say himself is that he's not very good at likenesses, but I'm not sure whether that was the reason that Stan Lee's face was redrawn, because Stan Lee has a kind of like a caricature type face. He'd achieved it by around about this point in his career. But it may be because of the erasure of Kirby that the face had to be redrawn. And so there you go. That's the cover. Still an excellent cover, but such a shame that Kirby isn't on it. So let's open this one up to the splash page. It's a triple-sized issue, so fairly thick. There's a lot in it. I'm not sure, as I speak to you now, whether I'm going to split this into two videos or not. I'm keeping an eye on the time, and I don't want the video to run too long. The main story by Byrne is in two parts. So this is part one, As I Lay Dreaming, and it is 18 pages. Ends with a fantastic, superb double-page spread. I'll make a decision when I get to that whether I stop the video or not, because the second chapter is 22 pages. And Byrne's script is fairly dense in this period of his work. Remember, he's only about 6 issues less on the title. He started with issue 232 as writer-artist, and already he's got this real challenge of how do you do a fitting 20th anniversary for Marvel's first family, for the first title of the Marvel Comics universe. In 1961, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby revolutionized the comic book industry with the introduction of a new and daringly different group of superheroes. Now we proudly invite you to join with us in celebrating the 20th anniversary of the world's greatest comics magazine. So Stan Lee presents the Fantastic Four. And amazing to think now from the perspective of 2025, when I'm making this video review, that in 1981 the Fantastic Four was only 20 years old as a comic book. And now, from the vantage point of 2025, it's 64 years old this year. So the title of the story overall is Terror in a Tiny Town. And the opening splash, well, it looks like we're going back to Fantastic Four #1 with the unauthorized space shuttle mission. Reed Richards leading his girlfriend, her younger brother, and Ben Grimm to the experimental rocket there behind the guard who's unawares of them. Is that what we're going to be reading? Well, let's get into this story, part 1, As I Lay Dreaming. So here we see the familiar origin story. The thunder of giant rockets cracks wide the evening stillness of a secret missile base. An unauthorized flight to the stars is underway. The countdown of history has begun. Aboard the hurtling projectile, 4 valiant adventurers plunge towards the unknown. So there we go. That's the origin of the Fantastic Four. Must go back to the splash page though for the full creator credits. John Byrne, words and pictures, so he's doing the script, pencils, inks, Jim Novak on letters, and Glynis Wine on the colours. So we're in the cockpit of the spacecraft, and Reed is giving orders to Ben Grimm as pilot. Primary circuits at maximum function. All systems show green for first stage jettison. She's behaving like a baby. Everything is perfect. And Ben says, yeah, except for the cosmic rays. No one knows what they'll do. So when the chemical rockets are exhausted and split off, we're told first stage jettison is go. We had to do it. We had to be the first. I wonder who says that. Is it Reed? And maybe Ben says, but we're reaching the cosmic storm area. Hang on. So there's Ben as pilot. Sue in the background. Ben says, hear that? It's the cosmic rays. I warned you about them. So there they are, tacking away outside the hull of the ship. Reed says, Ben, quickly, you must engage the experimental star drive now. So that's Reed's own invention. Get us through the radiation belt before. And Ben says, too late. They're penetrating the ship. Our shielding isn't strong enough. And someone says, but I don't feel anything. Course not. They're just like light rays. You can't feel them, says Ben, but they'll affect you just the same. Or is it Ben that says that? Or is this Reed already beginning to stretch here? Could be. My head, it's pounding as though it's about to burst. And then we begin to see the transformations taking place. Ben was right, says Sue. We should have waited, should have gotten heavier shielding. Johnny, what is it? What's happening to you? And he says, I don't know, Sue. My body feels hot, like it's on fire. I feel like I'm burning up. And then Ben Grimm here, listen to me, says, someone else take the controls. I can't handle the ship anymore. My arms are heavy. Too heavy, can't move. Too heavy, got to lie down, can't move. So it is absolute panic stations. What's happening? The ship is going down like a kite, suddenly without a breeze. It yaws sickeningly and plunges down. As it strikes a thick blanket of the atmosphere, it begins to burn like legendary Icarus, struck from the sky for daring to reach too close to heaven. The blazing coffin hurtles down, down, down and crashes, and Johnny Storm is jolted awake. So is this Johnny Storm in the present, remembering the fateful rocket trip by which they were bathed with the cosmic rays and given their superpowers? So he emerges from the dream exclaiming, no. Let's continue and see what the situation here is once we get past these advertisements. So he's there, he puts the light on. Great work by Byrne on the background details and furnishings of his bedroom. He thinks to himself in his thought balloon, oh wow, that was the worst one yet. Bad enough I got to start having dreams that read like reject scripts from the Twilight Zone. But dreaming myself, Reed, Sue and Ben, all of us dead, that goes above and beyond your standard issue nightmare. I'm starting to think maybe I'm losing my marbles. So what's going on here? Hey, look at the time, he says. So he goes for a shower. The dream fades quickly, we're told. He exits the house, the room that he's renting, or the apartment he's renting in the house. He's congratulating himself on getting in and out of the shower and shaved. Mrs. Lucas is his landlady, gets into his, is it some kind of Model T Ford motor car? No reason to tell my landlady I'm having nightmares. No reason to tell anyone, he says, except maybe Sue or Reed. Maybe I'll just cruise on by and see if the family Richards is up and about yet. So how come he's not in New York City? How come he's not in the Baxter building? Having so decided, Johnny Storm turns from his usual route to Al's garage and drives through a quiet residential area. So this is not the normal status quo of the Fantastic Four. Something's happened between the last month and this month, the reader infers. So this woman yells over to him, "Hey Johnny, hey Betty Lou," and he thinks to himself, Betty Lou Anderson, I've been meaning to give her a call. Maybe I'll do that tonight, but maybe something else. You'll have something else to do tonight, Johnny Storm. A few minutes later, and there we are, the ever humble Richards residence. Boy, makes me think I won't mention my dreams to Reed. So he pulls up, and what is all of this? This is all unfamiliar to readers of the monthly comic. And Johnny thinks to himself, he's just uncool enough to try to whip me off to Happy Hollow. That's if he tells him about the dream. Well, speak of the devil, it's everyone's favourite absent-minded professor himself. So he greets Reed. Reed is off to work, smoking his pipe just as he did in Fantastic Four #1. Sorry, I can't stop to chat just now. He says, I'm running a little late for class, so he's teaching a class. Sue is there in her pinafore with his briefcase. The absent-minded professor has forgotten it. So he thanks her for it. Off he goes, putting on his coat. And then the two siblings talk. Johnny saying, well, he seems even more befuddled than usual. What's up, sis? So Reed can be abstracted, but befuddled? That's a bit much for him. So there's a little mystery here for readers. And Sue says, I don't make fun, Johnny. Reed is having a very trying time at the university. Professor Vaughn insists on treating Reed as if he's totally incompetent, and it's really getting him down, she says. And on top of that, I've been having the strangest dream about the three of us and Ben preparing for some kind of space flight. So that gets Johnny's attention. Look at the look of astonishment on his face. That's really well done by Byrne. Space flight, he thinks to himself. That sounds like it fits right in front of my dream. I wonder if I should. Nah, she'll probably just think I'm trying to weasel in on her act. So he says to her, hey, don't sweat it, sis. Reed's a big boy. And as for bad dreams, well, even I have them. But he doesn't reveal the nature or content of his dream to his big sister. So off he goes in his car. And the name of the town he's driving down the main street of is Leeville. Man, this bird gets deader every day, he thinks to himself. A hot item like yours truly is wasted here. And look at his bespoke license plate, Hot One. So interesting how that connects with, of course, his Fantastic Four power as the Human Torch. One of these years I'll have saved enough to kiss Littleville goodbye forever, and then it's New York, here I come. So visions of fame and fortune dancing in his head, Johnny swings around the town square, passing the grim-faced statue of Josiah Little. As usual, Johnny ignores the Latin motto on the statue's base, per ardua, through hardship. Johnny has no time for hardship. So a very intriguing opening to this chapter of the anniversary story. And then we pick up with the only other member of the Fantastic Four that we haven't seen in Littleville, and it is Ben Grimm. And look at this, he's running a tavern and cafe, and he's married as well. Ben, was that Johnny I just saw drive by? Says his wife. The very man himself, babe. Why? I thought you said you were going to mention your dreams to him or Reed. So Ben's having dreams too. Lots of time for that, Alicia. So this is Alicia Masters. And she's got sight. She can see. She's not blind. I want to make sure I ain't a candidate for a rubber room before I go blabbing about that stuff, he says to her. You know, kid, it's funny, but you asking if you just saw Johnny makes me feel good all over. I don't know what it is, but something about looking into your baby blues and knowing they're looking back somehow, that seems real special. So, of course, there's lots of dramatic irony there for the reader who knows these characters in other guises. And she doesn't understand, so he gives her a kiss. And we'll see that kiss mirrored at the end of the story, but with some changes, so bear that in mind. Me either, kid, he says, but one thing I do know for sure, I love you, Mrs. Grimm. So they're married. And over on the other side of the street is Alicia Masters' stepfather. Perfect, he thinks. It's all going exactly as I wanted. Philip Masters, Toys for All Ages. He has been called other things, but his name is Philip Masters. He's Alicia's stepfather, and at this moment, he's a very happy man. So one of the other things he's known as is the Puppet Master. So has he got something to do with all of this? 15 hours later, once again at the home of Sue and Reed Richards. So they're getting ready for bed. Sue asks her husband how did it go at college, any troubles with Professor Vaughan? And Reed replies, oh no, he wasn't in today. I took the opportunity to discuss my problem with some of the other instructors, but except for Dr. Singh, they all think I'm paranoid, or worse, they agree with Vaughan. Susan does what she can to ease her husband's worries, and within the hour, both have drifted off to sleep. I just wonder if between this panel and this panel, this married couple are doing, John Byrne is implying, what married couples do. And, Reed, despite his big brain, he's an adult man. And is that what's being implied there between the lines? You tell me in the comment section. Reed Richards' slumber is deep and untroubled. Perhaps indeed there was some marital coupling going on in that hour. His wife is not so lucky, so she's troubled and worried about things, and she has a dream connected with that. The dream. So here we have the foursome. I'm sorry with all my heart to find you so set against me, Ben, but the project must go ahead as planned, says Reed as he lights up his pipe. It ain't you I'm against, Reed, and you know it, but you haven't taken enough safety precautions. And until you get some decent shielding for that ship, if you want to fly to the stars, you pilot the thing, count me out. Look at the face on Johnny there in the background listening to all of this. He's not happy at all. So Reed responds, Ben, we've been through all this before. I know there are dangers, but the gains we could make, even in terms of pure knowledge, are worth the risks. So Ben's not happy. Says you'd walk naked into a blast furnace if you thought you'd learn something. You know we haven't done enough research into the effects of cosmic rays. They might kill us all out in space. So Ben is cautious. Ben wants further safety measures. His caution isn't out of cowardice, it's out of prudence. Sue, what does she say to Ben? Ben, you know we only have a little time. Reed's private fortune is almost exhausted. If we don't show results, the government may cut off its funding. I never thought you would be a coward, she says. But like I said, it's not about cowardice. Normally the dream ends here. Tonight it does not. A coward, that gets his goat. Ben, she says, as the jacket on his back begins to rip. Nobody calls me a coward. Let's turn the page. See what happens. Transforms into the thing. We get a classic Kirby layout here from John Byrne. That's the 4 big panels. That's the layout he was using around the middle of his run on Fantastic Four, around the Galactus issues. Not you, not anybody. I'll smash anyone who calls me that, he says. So Sue calls out for Reed. Ben's turned into a thing. So Reed then dodges Ben's fist, and his elastic powers come into play. Wraps Ben up. No good, rubber man, says Ben, turning into a human elastic band. Don't count for spit against my strength. So Sue is aghast, and Johnny smashes the chair over the thing here as he grabs those logs from the fire and touches them up against Johnny, and he basically leaps into flame. So that's what wakes Sue up from her nightmare. So it's all a twisted version of their alter egos that we're familiar with, and a kind of like a domestic tragedy origin for them in a way. So she calls out in her nightmare, wakes up Reed. He asks her, is she all right? She says, oh Reed, it was awful, worse than it has ever been. So he knows about the dreams, the ever worsening nightmares, but Reed tells her it was only a dream. I know, but parts of it seem so real. She says in reply, oh listen, our son is crying, my scream must have waked him. It's all right, Franklin, Mommy's coming, she says. You can just see that look of worry on Reed's face there as well. It's good stuff by Byrne. So now he's got something to think about. He's there thinking, I know almost nothing about the psychology of dreams these days. I have enough trouble with my own fields, and yet somehow I feel it has not always been so. This confusion I feel constantly, the difficulty I have in concentrating on anything for more than a few minutes. Perhaps Vaughan is right. Perhaps I am a hopeless incompetent, and yet. So he's got some things that he's going to think out. And lunchtime the next day, he meets Johnny in, I presume, it is Ben's tavern there. Look at all the detail that Byrne works in. But see the way that Byrne works. Once the space is established, he will pull back on the details sometimes. So this particular panel here doesn't have any background, but we'll see it more clearly on other pages. But pay attention. Like Byrne, when he's establishing a location, a space, will put the work in, a lot of work. And then once it's established, he'll take advantage and clear out the backgrounds on some pages. So Johnny's talking to Reed, and Reed says to him about Sue's dreams. Dreams and their meaning have long been the subject of much research, but the interpretations have varied so much as to be inconclusive. And Johnny says, still, I wouldn't have thought Sis would have sci-fi and monster dreams, not without a couple of Ben's pizzas inside her anyway, and you'll forgive me for saying so, Reed, but building rockets seems out of your field. I quite agree, he replies, but there's that feeling. So Ben overhears them talking about weird dreams, and he says he's been having them too, only my dreams are kind of embarrassing. See, we're all some kind of superheroes, he says. Sue's an invisible girl, Johnny's a human torch, you're a fantastic rubber guy, and me, I can punch down buildings with one hand. Only there's some stuff even stranger than that. Me and Alicia ain't married in my dream. In fact, for some reason, I'm even afraid to ask her. And Alicia is blind. So he doesn't remember in his dream his rocky orange brick form. He says, as he leans on their table, that's a good pose there by Byrne, I can't make no sense of it. So Reed says it's disturbing. The parallels between the different dream scenarios are so exact and yet just dissimilar enough. Johnny's dream has him burning up in the cosmic rays. Sue has him catching fire. Yours has him a human torch. Your strength is common to yours and Sue's. My stretching also. It's confusing and annoying, he says. I feel like I should be able to. But then they're interrupted by the arrival of Philip Masters. So big smile on Grimm's face. He says, well, hey, if it ain't my favourite father-in-law, how you doing? So they all sit down at the booth. Philip Masters joins the others and talk turns from the stuff of dreams to everyday goings-on of Leeville. But hours later, when he returns to work, Reed has a little chat with Professor Singh, and Singh brings him in to his laboratory. Just wanted to show you my new toy, a LaSalle Devaney particle accelerator. Reed recognizes the machinery here. Now this is Byrne tech rather than Kirby tech. Byrne will include a little Kirby tech a little later in the issue. So Reed is admiring the equipment. He says, this is marvelous. It has the capability of recreating any form of radiation from simple sunlight to the most deadly wavelengths. With something like this I could, but he's interrupted by the arrival of Professor Vaughan. Well, I'm glad you can remember my name, at least, says Vaughan, since you seem incapable of remembering my orders. I've told you repeatedly that you are tolerated here only because of your marginal proficiency in your field. I will not have you toying with valuable university equipment. Is that clear? So Reed is humbled, quieted. He agrees, yes, he says, and Vaughan goes off laughing. But look at that face. And the name, Vaughan. Does it bring up anything for readers? Excellent, he thinks to himself, the knowledge that so delicious a mechanism as the accelerator is available, but denied to him, will drive Richards into ever greater depths of despair and confusion. My plan is working perfectly. So who is it that is forever looking down his nose at Reed Richards and regarding him as incapable, incompetent, and who develops plans? Who could it be? Later that afternoon, alone after dismissing his class, Reed Richards broods. There must be a way to make sense of it all, he thinks to himself. Lots and lots of detail on this classroom here. The blackboard there, the desk, the students' desks, lots of work into it. The shelf of books there on the wall, and then see the way Byrne drops out the backgrounds. Once the space is established, he'll do that. So Reed, thinking, theorizing, thinking here, I might almost accept a kind of telepathy between Sue and Johnny, his brother and sister, concerning their dreams. But Ben is of no blood relation to any of us. If only I could concentrate. But he falls asleep. He starts to doze and dreams. And this is an interesting sequence here. The now familiar elements flash before his mind's eye. The four of them are bombarded by the mysterious cosmic rays. But in this version, their rocket does not explode. Instead, they survive and are reborn as the Fantastic Four. So that's the clearest dream of them all in respect of their alternative lives outside of Leeville. He sees also their headquarters atop the Baxter building, not in Leeville, but in the heart of Manhattan. He sees a typical day in the life of the fabulous foursome dramatically interrupted. A strange and familiar power seizes control of their minds. Robot-like, they're marched through the 5 levels of their headquarters up to the hangar deck. Taking their Fantasticar, they fly north and west across New York State into the Adirondack Mountains. There, a jarring anachronism confronts them. A medieval castle rises from the forest. And inside, the man they have come to think of as Ben Grimm's kindly father-in-law, a man with another name, the Puppet Master, and with him, one other here in deep silhouette behind Philip Masters. So here we're getting what happened before our in medias res beginning in Leeville. At that moment, the dream is rudely ended. Interesting here, we get a 9-panel grid. That's a Steve Ditko layout that Byrne is using on this particular page. So Reed falls off his chair, my head ringing like a gong, he thinks to himself. That will teach me to fall asleep. When my head suddenly, my thoughts don't seem muddled, suddenly everything is clear. My dream, it was true, he thinks to himself. I know it was. We are the Fantastic Four, and somehow the Puppet Master ensnared us, stripped us of our powers. But how? Our very molecular structure was altered. How could he remove our powers? Unless... Grim resolution fixed on his features, Reed Richards strides through the deserted halls of the university. He's thinking, I've spent years trying to cure Ben. I've been the thing. Where I failed, the Puppet Master could not have succeeded. Therefore, he must have found a way to create the illusion of our powers being gone. Yes, this scalpel is just what I need. Look at all the detail in this laboratory, including the poster of the dissected frog there on the wall. And again, all of the thick specificity of detail in this top-down shot on Reed's office with all the books, all the individual books in the bookshelves. The binders here with individual pages indicated. Lots and lots of work by Byrne on this page in particular. So he rolls up his shirt sleeve. He thinks he's taking a gamble. He thinks somehow our personalities have been transferred into robot bodies. I can only prove that by hard evidence, the evidence of what must lie just below the artificial skin. So he uses the scalpel to plunge deep into his skin and screams. A searing bolt of blinding pain lances into Reed Richards' brain, and he collapses unconscious on the cold tiles as a pool of red liquid begins to collect beneath his arm. So, not a robot. So his hypothesis proved empirically not to be correct. The scientific method in action. An hour later at the Richards home. Look at all the detail here. The fireplace, Johnny playing with Franklin there, Alicia sitting down on the sofa chair, and Sue pulling back the curtains there, looking out. She's worried why Reed is so late. In he comes through. Is it the back door? I'm sorry, Susan. I would have called, but I was afraid the telephone lines might be monitored. And the way he looks, like with the downlighting, his face, his eyes in silhouette, he looks like a skull. there with the lighting. He looks haunted. So Sue is astonished, frightened. "You look like death," she says. "Good heavens, your sleeve is soaked with blood." He says, "Not blood, Sue, but something very much like it. You must all listen to me very carefully." So he begins his explanation. We do have fantastic powers. He says, "We have made many powerful enemies as the Fantastic Four. One of them is called the Puppet Master. He is in reality Philip Masters." So he apologizes to Alicia. "I realize this must be painful for you, but Masters has somehow imprisoned us in these artificial bodies." So Sue is upset. Ben in particular. Ben says, "You're all shocky from loss of blood, pal. You're hallucinating. Let us help you." But Reed is angrily adamant. He says, "You don't believe me, but you will. Our very lives may depend on it. I will make you believe," he insists. Let's turn the page. We have Philip Masters. He is closing up his shop, his toy shop, looking forward to dropping in on his stepdaughter and son-in-law. His plans are about to go astray. So he is knocked through the door in one punch by Ben Grimm. And Ben isn't happy at all. "Okay, you motherless son of a, what have you done to us?" But look at all the detail in here of all the toys by Byrne. Really putting a lot of work in. So Alicia begs Ben, don't hurt him. Ben says as he lifts him up, classic Linus, Oliver trope here. The implication that he's about to punch Philip Masters in the face. And we've got a red background for the impending violence. "Hurt him, hurt him. I'm going to bust him into little bitty pieces if you don't start talking fast." So the Puppet Master says, "Obviously you found out that none of this is real. The town is a sham. The other people are robots. All this is a product of my genius. And you four, Alicia and the child, are synth clones. Puppets," he says. So Alicia asks him why. And he says, "I wanted to give you what you most desired, a normal life with the man you've chosen to love, with Ben Grimm. I did it all for you, Alicia," he says. But Reed's not happy. "Wait a minute. You could conceive of such a plot, but you haven't the technology to implement it." So the Puppet Master says, "Of course not. So I made a puppet from my mind-controlling radioactive clay, a puppet of someone who could help me." "Who?" asks Reed. And then off panel or above panel, a thunderous voice. "Surely, Reed Richards, that is not so difficult to deduce." And Sue, Reed, that voice. Look at Philip covering his ears there. So loud is the voice. And this is it. Let's turn the page. Get ready for this. Now seminal, now famous double page spread. There we go. It is Doom. Dr. Von Doom. Who else could have taken the childish plot of Philip Masters and crafted it into the perfect vengeance against his most hated enemies? Who but Dr. Doom? There you go. That's the end of part 1. And you know what? This is a good half hour already, so I'm going to make this part 1 of a 2-part video review of the 20th anniversary issue of Fantastic Four, issue 236, because I think it's better to do it that way. So if you enjoyed this part 1 review, do stick around for when part 2 is published. Let's go back to that cover, but before we do, just take a little look at this page, because this is the editor, Jim Salicrup, giving an identification key for all of the 41 figures on the cover, and also some information about the backup story. You know what I'll do, just to round out this part 1, because the next piece is 22 pages, so the first chapter is only 18 pages. We'll have a look at this. So what this is, and Salicrup explains it there, important note. Remember the FF cartoon show that was on TV a few seasons ago? Remember the simple yet stunning scripts by Stan the Man, the dynamic layouts by Jolly Jack Kirby, and what about Herbie the Robot? Well, we thought it would be fun to take one of those shows and turn it into an honest-to-gosh Marvel comic. This particular tale featuring Doctor Doom seemed perfect for this special 20th anniversary issue. It's a somewhat simplified version of Fantastic Four number 5, and well, you get the idea, enjoy. So it's the Stan Lee script, Jack Kirby breakdowns. The breakdowns are his storyboards. They're taken from his storyboards for the cartoon. Jim Novak is supplying the lettering, George Rousas the colors, and there's a whole host of inkers finishing Jack Kirby's rough breakdowns from the cartoon storyboards. So you can see the story here. I'm not going to go through it all, but there we have Doctor Doom, Kirby's design of Doom, and yeah, it's intriguing because with the idea of or the device of taking the storyboards and repurposing them, you're getting a lot of panels per page, and they don't look quite right in terms of Jack Kirby layouts. There's too many panels per page here, and that's not Kirby's layout style. So there's a kind of like a compromise going on here. It's something new in a way for readers. They haven't seen exactly this before, with Fantastic Four number 5 turned into this 14-page story. One of these pages is inked by John Byrne as well. And I think that's it. No, it's not yet. So another couple of pages here. That's the end there. So Fantastic Four number 5 was the first appearance of Doctor Doom, if I'm not mistaken. So that is interesting choice for like a special entry for the 20th anniversary issue. So as I said, this will be part 1 of my review of Byrne's 20th anniversary story. Do stay tuned for part 2. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like and share the video. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.